Welcome to the Greenroom, a new podcast series by Sustainable Buildings Canada designed to help the building industry stay informed about the latest trends and techniques for building more sustainable buildings. I'm Jeff Fredericks, and I'm live at the 2022 Green Buildings Festival in downtown Toronto. Okay, great, Peter. Thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I'm a builder from Edmonton Alberta. I've been building net zero energy houses for since about 2007, and kind of woke up to the need to transform our existing houses to net zero, and some of the same thinking goes into it.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your presentation, and specifically, I know you're talking about Energiesprong. For those that aren't familiar with that particular approach to building, maybe an overview, and then what you shared with us today at the presentation.
Okay, so the Energiesprong system is something that's being developed in Holland to deal with their hundreds of thousands of post-war townhouses, basically, that were built with virtually no insulation. And they've developed a system where they do a digital scan of the existing buildings, take that back to the office and use it to design wall and roof panels that have siding on them, new windows, and are designed to sort of zip together to be a nice warm parka. They take these buildings from leaky, cold, energy guzzling buildings to net zero. They're even installing the solar panels, and they guarantee it they guarantee zero on the meter. So the housing associations who engage them can essentially kiss goodbye their energy bills.
Yeah, terrific. And does this process of building speed up the process of what one might expect a regular sort of deep retrofit to take?
It does. It speeds it up a lot. I'm not sure what their time would be like, but it's certainly saving us time. We're not as fast as they are. We can do a group of townhouses in about a month and a half, but we're finding that the panelization process, while it's working fine, is only a part of the problem. We also have to get the buildings ready. We have to install new mechanical systems and new finishes and all that kind of stuff. And as in any renovation project, there's an awful lot of work that goes with just dealing with site conditions.
Right. And so, what, in terms of context, what might a regular sort of non-Energiesprong approach take in terms of time? So if you're delivering your solution in a month and a bit, how much of a time saver is it compared to a conventional way?
We really haven't quantified that because we haven't done similar buildings in a similar way, but I'm guessing we would be saving somewhere around 20% of the time, something like that. And the other thing is that the quality control in the workshop is a lot higher than you would get from a group of carpenters on site. I think job satisfaction is higher, and it allows us to, like, while the panels are being built, we can be doing other things, so it allows us to sort of piggyback on the schedule.
Another thing we hear a lot about these days is this idea of embodied carbon, the cost of construction, and are there some savings in terms of this approach to reducing the impact that the construction itself has on the environment?
So there are a number of savings from our approach. One is that we're doing almost no demolition. We're cutting off the roof overhangs and taking off little bits of the existing finish, but most of it just stays there. We're first and foremost reusing the existing building, and we're also using a pretty low carbon solution. The panels themselves are wood-based, the insulation is cellulose, So we've got an energy impact from the new triple glazed windows and the heat pumps and otherwise little bits and pieces of wiring and that kind of thing. So basically it's a pretty, it's hard to imagine a lower carbon solution to getting these buildings operational carbon down to near zero.
Right. Well, and I love the way you described it as sort of applying a warm parka. I guess the idea is, as you say, you keep the existing, most of the existing structure in place, and then come and affix, I guess, the panels in the case of that work to the building, right? So there's not a lot of demolition, as you say.
Yeah, minimal.
Yeah.
We really do as little as possible. It has a significant cost. It takes labor to do it. It costs money to get rid of the material, and there's an environmental impact to that as well. So it's there's a real huge incentive to keeping that to a bare minimum.
The other thing you mentioned during your presentation today is about minimizing the impact to the occupants of the building. And can we talk a bit about that? Because when you think about deep retrofits, that's one of the, I suppose, disincentives, is what do we do with the people that are actually living in that space? So how does this approach mitigate the impact to them?
Well, here we're inspired by the Dutch Energiesprong approach. People stay living there, but in order to do that and not not drive them crazy, we really have to be careful about how we work in their homes, essentially. And there are some things we need to do. We have to go in to loosen the existing windows. We have to install HRVs because we're making these buildings airtight. And that means to maintain healthy air, we've got to have a controlled ventilation system, which they didn't have. And there's a huge energy upside to the HRV too, to get that healthy fresh air with a high level of heat recovery. So we gotta keep these folks happy, and so it's really inspired us to save time and demolition when we're installing the HRVs to use existing cavities and but also just to keep engaged with the clients, let them know what we're doing, when we're going to do it, when they got to get that couch out of our way, and that kind of stuff, so that we can get at all the windows and do the finishing carpentry to do the jamb extensions, because now these windows are, the wall's like 14 inches thick, and they've got these great big deep windowsills that have to be made, essentially, and painted and all of that kind of stuff. So we've developed a system for keeping them informed, and also dealing with the odd anomaly that arises. Somebody will have a complaint or a concern and that kind of thing. It all takes time.
Well, you shared with us today as well during the presentation that you're also creating a bit of a library of these projects as sort of case studies, so that I guess others who want to understand what that process looks like, what the output would look like, can visit the site and sort of learn the different types of projects that you've actually completed.
Yeah, so we've just barely started on this,
right.
but we really we've had such a substantial learning curve ourselves. We, in order to get this done, we've got 14 million dwellings in Canada. In order to get this done, we have to learn from each other, and we have to, make new mistakes. We can't, and get faster and faster, and get people up to speed faster. So our thought is that by having a library of case studies, we can show people. For example, in the single-family house world, if I have a semi-bungalow in Saskatoon, I can look on the site and say, oh, there's one in Edmonton, same climate zone, about the same vintage. This is what they did. This is what it cost, and here's a link to a bunch of the techniques that they use to make it go easier and faster, and observe good building science, and we're hoping that by making that available and growing it and linking it to a library of details, that we can kind of inspire a community of practice where people will get their projects up there and that over time we can curate the details, and the good ones will rise to the top.
Yeah, great idea. Sort of like an open source.
Absolutely open source.
Yeah, type of approach.
We're committed to getting this in as many hands as possible, as fast as possible.
Well, and that was my next question, just about how do we scale this thing? So, what about the rest of Canada? I mean, this is specific to Edmonton.
So far, it's Edmonton and Calgary. We've got some projects in Calgary, and we've got connections to projects across the country that that are in the works. We're a volunteer board working on a shoestring right now, and we're looking for funding to take this idea and put some full-time staff that we think will be necessary, not only to enter case studies, because we're talking about thousands. My colleague at Enercan says we have 6,500 housing archetypes in Canada or something like that. Yeah. So we need to get as many of those up there as possible with the supporting details. And I think that the details themselves will be useful. Some of the details that will be useful in single-family housing will be useful in multifamily townhouses, even high-rises. And I think organizing the database and keeping it current and linked in a useful way is going to be a kind of a full-time job. So that's our next step.
Great. And just last question here, just in terms of the overall response, both to the occupants in terms of how they enjoy living in their new deep retrofitted home, to the professional community, how have they responded to some of the things that you've been sharing with them?
Well, the response in both cases has been pretty encouraging. The professional community totally gets that not only is this an enormous challenge, but it's also an enormous opportunity. Like nobody in the building community will ever be unemployed again if we tackle this with what we or underutilized, and it's it's really it's kind of fun, and it feels like really worthwhile work. And then from the residents' point of view, like this is an engaged community that we're working with. They get it. They're really proud of being pioneers of what they're doing, and I think what they didn't expect that's really gratifying for me is how the improvement of comfort and humidity control and stuff like that they didn't have in these leaky old townhouses has improved their lives. They're way cozier. They now have cooling in the summer. The folks whose units we've finished kind of go around with a smile when it's plus 30, and the other ones are, come on, you guys, get over here. And in the winter, it's just so cozy and warm, and it just, it's a hard thing to sell. We've been trying to sell that benefit through Passive House and R2000 and all that kind of stuff for years, but you really need to experience it to appreciate it. Yeah, and I think these folks they get it now.
Yeah, yeah. And they're champions and sort of brand ambassadors to the idea. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Very last question is, the theme of this conference, of course, is positive, and just by way of your own views of the next year, what are some of the things that you're most excited about seeing advance in 2023 as it relates to our climate challenge?
Well, I mean, we aren't quite positive with this project. We weren't able to generate a surplus of solar electricity just because the original roofs were built at suboptimum angles. But the community is committed to buying wind and solar power from southern Alberta to make up the 25% shortfall. So I'm a reduce first and then generate kind of advocate, and I'm so excited to see that the conferences, every one of them this morning, focused on on the desperate need to get going on this, to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty and just get some buildings done.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And you're helping to lead the way. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Thank
yeah.
you. Okay.
That was a great discussion.